OTAs are over. The New York Giants have officially finished OTAs as they head towards minicamp, which will begin on Monday and last through Wednesday. The final 3 practices for the New York Giants before that long break until training camp in July. So OTAs are finished. Spring training is almost over for the New York Giants. There have been a ton of storylines with players who performed well, players who got injured, players who got signed all throughout this spring as the Giants had a really active offseason. Whether you're talking about starting in January when they hired John Harbaugh, in March when they went on a big spending spree with Tremaine Edmonds, Isaiah Likely, Pat Ricard, and everybody else, whether you're talking about the NFL draft and all of the rumors leading up and then landing Arvell Reese and Francis Maui-Noah, the Dexter Lawrence trade, and then most recently, of course, the signing of the 3 receivers, including the return of Odell Beckham Jr., Juju Smith-Schuster joining him, and Braxton Berrios. So much has gone down for the New York Giants. Well, let's talk football. Let's not talk roster construction. Let's not talk coaching staff additions or trades. We are talking practice. How did the New York Giants perform? Who looked the best? Who looked the worst? Who has been putting that work in? And what are we keeping an eye on as we head towards this mini camp next week and training camp next month? We're going to unpack all of it, go over all of the breakdowns, the takeaways, the recap of New York Giants 2026 OTAs. Let's get right into it. This is Fireside Giants presented by Prize Picks. I'm Anthony Rivardo. Let's dive right in, man. I can't wait. But before we talk about the Giants, let me just say, let's go New York Knicks. Game 2 tonight. I cannot wait. Let's go pick up that dub, be 2-0 in San Antonio, and head home to the Garden, hopefully with some brooms. We'll see. I'm really excited for tonight, though, if you guys can't tell. I even got the Knicks hat on. So let's talk about the top takeaways and standout players. We're going to start with the standout players, and we are going to highlight the rookie 5th overall pick, Arvell Reese. Now, again, you guys know OTAs, there's no pads on. They're in shorts, they're in T-shirts, and they're running around, and they are not hitting each other. But that doesn't mean we can't learn things about these defensive players, because we surely can. The defensive players do put that work in, and they do demonstrate athleticism as much as anything else. And Arvell Reese is one of those players who has really demonstrated his athleticism. He stands in, as you guys know, at a big 6'4", 243 pounds. But at that size, he doesn't move like he's that size. He moves like a cornerback, a safety, roams around the defense, going sideline to sideline with elite athleticism and speed. And that was on full display all throughout training camp. Or I'm sorry, not training camp, OTAs. As we've been doing these OTA practice recaps and episodes every single day, we've talked about Arvell Reese more days than not. We've mentioned that his sideline-to-sideline speed is showing up. We've mentioned that the Giants have been moving him all over the defense, having him play inside linebacker, edge rusher, this version of inside linebacker versus that version of inside linebacker, whether you're talking Mike or Will or Sam. He's been moving all over the defense, which is exciting. It's what they drafted him to do, and he's already executing at a high level, making great plays in coverage, which I think is the biggest takeaway for Arvell Reese. The speed has shown up not just in run defense, not just in pass rush, but also in coverage, which if there was any weak point for him in college, it was coverage skills. But so far, he has looked excellent in coverage. So very excited about what we're getting in the 5th overall pick in this year's draft. Let's also talk about Calvin Austin, who I think is the number 2 player that we talked about probably the most frequently behind Arvell Reese on these practice recap episodes. Calvin Austin was getting peppered by Jaxson Dart to start OTAs. Jaxson Dart was hitting him on big gain after big gain, constantly throwing the ball his way. And that continued all throughout OTAs, which have wrapped up. And I think that the top receiver who got the most receptions and scored the most TDs was probably Calvin Austin. Calvin Austin's an interesting name to focus in on because the New York Giants wide receiver room is loaded. Not necessarily loaded with talent, it's just loaded with bodies, right? You've got 15 wide receivers on this roster right now. You've got, of course, Malik Neighbors, you've got Darius Slayton, you've got Malachi Fields. Those are the 3 who are, and Darnell Mooney. Those are the 4 locks to make this roster. Then the other 11 guys are all competing for 1 to a maximum of 3 spots. And I only say 3 because one of those wide receiver spots is going to be a return specialist spot. But the Giants realistically are not going to hold more than 6 wide receivers. So the 3 that they signed the other day, only one of them is probably going to make this roster, whether you're talking Braxton Berrios, Odell Beckham Jr., or Juju Smith-Schuster. Maybe 2 of them make the roster because one of them plays primarily on special teams. But what about all the other guys? Jalen Hyatt's out of here. Let's not even discuss him. You've got Dalen Cambry, another special teams guy. You've got Ryan Miller. You've got so many receivers on the back end of this roster. It's difficult to tell who's going to be in and who's going to be out this early in the training period. We got to get to training camp. We got to see these guys compete. We got to see what Odell looks like when the pads come on, guys. I mean, listen, I want Odell to make the roster. I believe he will make the roster, but he said it himself, and John Harbaugh said it himself. It's not a guarantee. He's got to earn it, and he's here to earn it. Will he earn it? We'll find out, but we'll find out in the summer. He's only got 2 practices as a New York Giant in this, well, not 2 practices under his belt as a New York Giant, but 2 practices in this decade as a New York Giant under his belt. He's got to get a lot more work in to earn that roster spot, but he's going to be competing with, again, probably 10 receivers competing for 2 spots. We'll see exactly how that shakes out once we get into training camp and preseason. But digressing off of the competition, I want to highlight the fact that Calvin Austin has probably already locked in as that number 5 receiver. Now, I say probably, and I'll say take that with a grain of salt, because there was a point last year where in the spring and early summer, we thought that what was that wide receiver's name? He was wearing number 80 all throughout the summer, and he was a slot receiver, and he was catching a bunch of passes. His name is remiss to me right now. I'm forgetting who he was, but Montrell Washington. He was getting peppered by Jaxson Dart. We all thought he was going to make the roster, and he didn't. So while I do think Calvin Austin is going to make the roster, he's a good receiver, plays in the slot, returns kicks and punts. I think he's going to make the roster because he can do a lot, and because Jaxson Dart likes him so much. But who knows? We'll see. Got to wait for the competition in the summer at training camp. But Calvin Austin definitely did himself a lot of favors this spring, definitely earned some reputation with the coaching staff, and definitely earned some trust with the starting quarterback of this team. And those are the 2 most crucial things that you can do in the spring. So we'll see for Calvin Austin if he does make the roster, but he definitely made a lot of progress towards a roster spot this spring. So moving on to the next standout player is another wide receiver, and that is rookie Malachi Fields. Malachi Fields had several top plays throughout this practice period where we're talking about a leaping, twisting, one-handed catch, or we're talking about a leaping grab over defender in the back corner of the end zone and getting his feet down. He had a lot of highlight moments throughout this OTA period. Now, was he consistently getting all the receptions like a Calvin Austin? Maybe not. Maybe there were some days where he didn't get as many receptions, but he definitely made some highlight grabs, and he gave the Giants coaching staff reason to say, yep, that's why we drafted you. We want you to go up there and make the plays that nobody else on this roster can. Because when you look at this roster, even with the new additions like Berrios, like Odell, like Juju Smith-Schuster, none of them have the size and strength and catch radius that Malachi Fields has. Nobody on the roster has that. So it's great to see that it's already being put to use in these OTA practices. So very excited about the early progress and development from rookie 3rd-round pick wide receiver Malachi Fields out of Notre Dame. The tight ends, I'm just going to lump all of them together. The 2 mainly that I want to lump together are Isaiah Likely and Theo Johnson. Both of them appeared on the practice reports pretty frequently. Isaiah Likely went up there and made some big standout athletic one-handed grabs and contested catches. And, that's kind of what he's here for. And we've got high expectations for Isaiah Likely on this channel. I said that the Giants were signing him not to be a tight end, but more so to be a slot receiver, because that's what he did primarily in Baltimore. Yes, he's labeled as a tight end. He's built like a tight end, and he does play tight ends, but he actually lines up in the slot more than he lines up in line as a tight end. In fact, if you take it together, his snaps as a wide receiver and a slot receiver, they are greater than his snaps as a tight end in his NFL career. So is he a tight end or is he a receiver? Well, he's a tight end, but you guys get the point. He's going to move all over the offense. He's going to make plays, especially over the middle of the field and from the slot. And so far, the number 1 trait that we've seen from his time in Baltimore is translating to here with the New York Giants. And that is his ability to make plays off script with the quarterback. If you guys watch Lamar Jackson highlights, if you watch Lamar Jackson games, he loves to dance around, scramble, extend the play, and then find a receiver downfield. Now, that takes a lot of practice and coordination between the quarterback and his playmakers, where they need to understand the playmaker aspect of this is the fact that they have to make a play on their own sometimes. That Lamar Jackson will extend the play, but somebody's still got to get open. So when Lamar breaks contain and he breaks the pocket and he's making a second play within the play, the receivers and the tight ends need to be able to do that as well. Find the soft spot in the zone, run a second route. Isaiah Likely is really good at that. It's probably the thing that he's best at and where he got most of his highlight plays and production from as a member of the Baltimore Ravens. That's going to be unbelievably valuable to this New York Giants offense that's running a Matt Nagy system that comes from Andy Reid, which absolutely encourages the quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, and now Jaxson Dart, to extend the play, to scramble, to have the receivers run second routes. So Isaiah Likely is a perfect scheme fit for the New York Giants. He fits a major need after they lost Wan'Dale Robinson as somebody who can play in the slot. And he's just going to be really good in those extended play opportunities. And so far throughout OTAs, he has been. He's been making plays on those extended plays in particular. So really excited about Isaiah Likely, but also Theo Johnson. Theo Johnson had one of the most clutch moments of last season, which was against the Los Angeles Chargers when he ran a second route on a play that was extended by Jaxson Dart to get a first down on third down and ice the game. That was communication between Johnson and Dart. And we've seen it once again throughout OTAs. Again, he is extending the plays with Dart, but also he's just been getting a lot of receptions. Jaxson Dart absolutely loves to throw the ball to Theo Johnson. They're very close off the field. They're very close in communication on the practice field and on the football field. So do expect both of those tight ends to play a lot this season. I don't think the Giants view it as signing Isaiah Likely and now signing a new starting tight end. I think the Giants view it as signing Isaiah Likely and now having two starting tight ends that are going to play a lot of football this season. So keep an eye on those tight ends. Definitely two of the top standout performers from OTAs this offseason for the New York Giants. Now, before we dive into the other 5 standout players and then my 3 main takeaways from OTAs, I do want to dive into Prize Picks real quick and give a shout out to the sponsor of today's episode. So Prize Picks, if you guys are not familiar just yet, it is America's #1 sports picks app. It's super easy to use. You pick more or less on a few of your favorite players' stats, build your lineup, and that's that. And as you guys know, we do like to focus on football on this channel, and we do like to do some NFL picks here on Prize Picks, but we have Knicks fever, and we are all watching the Knicks playoff games, the NBA Finals games. So we're going to make some NBA Finals picks tonight for this. So what we're going to do, if you guys haven't seen this before, you go on Prize Picks, you go to popular, you can go to points, rebounds, fantasy score, field goals made. They got so many different options, but we're just going to go to popular and we're going to make a couple of Knicks picks. Now, they've got Jalen Brunson's, line at 25.5 points more. He's going for 30 tonight. It's Jalen Brunson. What are we talking about? He's going for 30. We're going to do that, and we're also going to take Karl Anthony Towns over 14 or more than 14.5 because I think he is a demon and he's been playing some great basketball. Now, the last thing that we're going to do is also take Dylan Harper more than 20.5 points, rebounds, and assists because he played really good in game 1. I think a lot of people failed to see that because the Spurs lost, but he did have a good game, even though, the rest of the team maybe wasn't as good as Spurs fans wanted them to be. But I do think that Dylan Harper is a good player, so I'm going to take more than 20.5 points, rebounds, and assists. I'm going to put that in my lineup with these 2 other picks, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to submit that lineup, and that's it. It's that easy, guys. So definitely check out Prize Picks. Make sure to use code HMA when you sign up. The link is also down below in the description box. You'll get $50 in lineups instantly when you play your first $5 lineup, and that's that. So definitely appreciate everybody tuning in. Let's go New York Knicks. Now let's dive back into this Giants OTAs recap. I meant to start the beginning of this episode with this next topic, but we're going to get into it now. And that is the fact that the Giants only had 9 OTA practices. If you guys were on the channel the other day, I said, I'll catch you back on the next one, which is going to be the last OTA practice report. And then it never happened. Well, why didn't it happen? Did I get lazy? Of course not. I wanted to do a 10th OTA practice recap for you guys, but they canceled it. The New York Giants canceled their 10th OTA practice. Why did they cancel it? The weather has been so beautiful in New York. Well, here's the report from Art Stapleton of NorthJersey.com. Change in plans, he said. Giants not back on field until mandatory minicamp begins Monday. Instead of practicing today for what would have been OTA 10, John Harbaugh and staff decided to take the team to New York City for community bonding event, including a visit to the 9/11 Memorial Museum, per sources. That's the end of the quote. And I absolutely love that. I can't remember the last time a Giants head coach did something like that. In fact, the only time that rings a bell is when Tom Coughlin canceled a practice to take everybody bowling in 2007, right before the Super Bowl run. Could we see something special this season? We'll see. That's the only time that I remember this, and I could be wrong. It's possible that Brian Dable maybe took them out on an event, or Pat Shurmur or McAdoo. I don't know. We've had so many coaches the last few years. But the most memorable moment where something like this happened was when a team bonding event happened where Tom Coughlin took the team bowling, and then they bonded, and then everybody loved Tom Coughlin after that because he was not well liked in the locker room prior to that. There are plenty of stories that have been delivered by the greats like Michael Strahan in the past. So I just think this is an awesome thing to learn here at the end of OTAs that John Harbaugh is making it an effort to bond the team together, because that's something that I think this Giants team really needed. And I think it's something that they really have strengthened a lot this year. I was at that charity softball event, the Brian Burns charity softball event. Once again, anytime I mention the event, I'm going to give a shout out to License Plate Guy. I'm going to give a shout out to Brian Burns. And I'm going to give a shout out to Hype for Life and Stanley McClover Lucci. Amazing work by those guys to raise $100,000 at that event. Unbelievable. And it goes to an excellent cause, helping families with children with autism. So definitely check out Hype for Life and shout out to those guys. At that event, though, you just saw the camaraderie and the bonds and the strength of this New York Giants roster. It's unlike anything that I've seen in years. I have not seen a team this tight, probably since I want to say 2016. I don't even think the 2022 team was this tight. I think the 2016 team is the last time I saw the New York Giants this tight, like as just brothers on the field. And that was on the softball field. And we've heard about it on the OTAs field. We hear about it all the time. I just think this is a very connected team right now. And I think the coaching staff is really working hard to build a culture and an identity with this team, bond them all together, but also bond them to the city. Like, that was a fan first event, that charity softball game. And now they're going into New York City to do bonding and community outreach there. And that's John Harbaugh leading all that. So I think it's excellent. You guys know I can't praise John Harbaugh enough on this channel. I love him, and I love what he's bringing to this team. I love his experience. I love his attention to detail. I love the fact that, he's out here just bringing so much knowledge and maturity to the organization. Like the way that he's handled recent controversies that the New York Giants had, whether you're talking about the Jaxson Dart, Abdul Carter beef that happened for a second, whether you're talking about a while ago, the issues with Malik Neighbors during the NFL draft. There's been a lot going on for the Giants this offseason, but those wild media storylines and narratives have not had the shelf life that they've had in years past. And a lot of that has to do with John Harbaugh handling it really well. So just a lot of credit to him. And I found it really cool that the team went, instead of doing that 10th practice, he's like, hey, we've had 9 good practices. You guys have done a great job. Let's go enjoy ourselves. Let's cancel this one. We'll get back on the field on Monday. I think that's great. That's what good bosses do. They reward their team, and this team definitely deserves to be rewarded fighting through a great 9 practices at OTA. So big shout out to John Harbaugh for that. Let's talk about a few more players that I think stood out. Next one's going to be Colton Hood, the rookie 2nd-round pick, the cornerback out of Tennessee. He had a very active spring, not even just OTAs, but rookie minicamp as well. Rookie minicamp, he had a pick 6, had a bunch of pass breakups in rookie minicamp. Then OTAs roll around, and it's more of the same. He had a pick 6, he had a bunch of pass breakups. He was constantly on the ball, and I just think he's a perfect scheme fit. As you guys know from the film breakdown that I posted on the channel a couple weeks ago, I think that he is the perfect cornerback for a Dennard Wilson defense, and he is going to be a beast in this New York Giants defense. So I'm thrilled about Colton Hood, excited to see that he's just been jamming people. He's been pressing. He's been playing very tight coverage according to all accounts, and he's been getting his hands on the football. Because we've heard this about cornerbacks in the past. Deonte Banks has had a good spring, but wasn't getting his hands on the football when the summer came around. Well, Colton Hood's been getting his hands on the football a lot. The buzz around him and the practice report details on him remind me a lot of the details that we got last offseason on Cordell Flott, where it was every practice, it was once again, Flott got his hands on the football. Then he had the big breakout during the season. I'm hoping that we see a big rookie year impact from Colton Hood this upcoming season. I can't wait for him. He's definitely one of my favorite picks that the Giants made. Now, another player who I saw on quite a few of the practice reports was 6th-round rookie out of Auburn, defensive tackle Bobby Jamison-Travis. Bobby Jamison-Travis had a few run stops. He had a couple of tackles for loss, and he had a couple batted passes at the line of scrimmage. So when the Giants drafted him, a lot of you were like, hey, what's the plan here? And then after they signed DJ Reader, it was, what's the starting defensive line configuration? Well, I don't think that the Giants know what it is just yet, but of course, with Roy Robertson Harris going down with a torn Achilles, this is an opportunity for any of these young guys to step up. It's not just Darius Alexander's job. Maybe it's his job to lose, but to lose is heavy emphasis because the Giants have other guys who are hungry for that job. It is an open competition. I do think Darius Alexander will be the starter in that position, but could one of the veterans like a Leaky Fotu take it, or somebody else that the Giants signed? They added a bunch of veteran defensive tackles to the mix. One of those guys could take the job, or it could be Darius Alexander. It could be Bobby Jamison-Travis, the notorious BJT, because he looks so much like Biggie. I really like what he brings to the table as an early down run stuffer, as a nose tackle, or just some extra mass, even as a 3-tech or a 2Y, whatever. He just has a lot of size and strength that a lot of the other defensive tackles on this Giants roster don't have. The Giants have a good amount of undersized DTs, and Bobby Jamison-Travis, well, he steps up as an oversized DT, which is what they needed. So I think he's going to be an asset to this team, and I'm really happy to hear that he's had an active spring, but I do need to see more as we get to training camp and as we get to preseason, because we've heard things like this before for these mid to late round Giants defensive tackles. I remember Jordan Riley out of Miami was a beast during the spring, didn't show up as much during the season, and ultimately didn't become a player who was a regular on the roster. So Bobby Jamison-Travis, good first step here, having a solid spring of practices. Now we need a solid summer of practices to get an impact early downs in the regular season. I only say early downs because I don't think he's going to be much of a pass rusher. Don't think he's been all that productive as a pass rusher even throughout these OTAs, but definitely as a run stopper. However, the pads aren't on. Once the pads come on, let's see how 330-pound Bobby Jamison-Travis matches up with 330-pound CeCe Maui-Noa. That's going to be a battle that I need to watch, because if Bobby Jamison-Travis starts winning those reps, it's not going to be to me because CeCe Maui-Noa is struggling. It's just going to be because BJT is looking really good. That's how I'm going to look at it. So we'll see how that goes, and I'm excited for more Biggie in Giants training camp. Now, other takeaways, other players who stood out. Jaxson Dart, let's talk about him, because I'm trying to go through the players that maybe we don't talk enough about. We talk a lot about Jaxson Dart, and you guys know where I stand on him. But I just want to pull away one specific thing from Jaxson Dart at OTAs. And that takeaway on Jaxson Dart's performance is play extension. We talked about this just a minute ago with Isaiah Likely and the whole conversation that we were just having there about the play extension. Play extension has been brought up a lot in these OTA practice reports. And I think it's something that the Giants are specifically working on with Jaxson Dart and trying to, give him the autonomy to be the gunslinger that he is. He's a player who models his game after the likes of an Aaron Rodgers or a Brett Favre, as he's mentioned himself in the past, or a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen. All of those guys are gunslingers. They're not afraid to throw the ball into traffic, to be aggressive with the football, and to throw it downfield. Jaxson Dart has that trait. But also all of those guys know how to extend the play. And they're amazing when they're off script, when the play breaks down, and when things don't go according to plan, they have a plan. They have a backup plan. They have an A, B, and a C. That's the common denominator with all those guys who I just mentioned, those elite future and current Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Jaxson Dart has traits and potential that allow him to also be an elite play extender. We've seen it show up. Whether you're talking about that Thursday night game versus the Eagles, where he scrambles and he hits Gunnar Olszewski for a big play, he fires it downfield to Lil Jordan Humphrey, right? Like, there were a lot of play extension moments for Jaxson Dart versus the New England Patriots. That 2-point conversion, rolls around, jump pass, and score. Like, so many play extension moments that make you say, wow, I see the Mahomes comparisons in this kid, right? Now they bring in the guy who helped develop Patrick Mahomes, Matt Nagy. Now we hear all spring, Jaxson Dart was extending the play a lot. Jaxson Dart was scrambling a lot. That doesn't seem like a coincidence to me. That seems like Matt Nagy saw that on his film and said, that's the trait that made Patrick Mahomes so special early in his career. That's the trait that I'm going to perfect in Jaxson Dart to make him really special in his career. So that's what I'm taking away from OTAs, is the fact that Jaxson Dart's been extending the play a lot, and he's been making some great plays off of the extension. Whether you're talking about that back corner touchdown that I mentioned earlier to Malachi Fields, which was on a scramble to his left, so a cross-body throw to Malachi Fields, or the extensions to Isaiah Likely that I mentioned. There's been a lot of play extensions. There's been a lot of big plays as a result, and so I'm very excited for that particular skill set to be the one that the Giants continue to hone in on, continue to perfect for Jaxson Dart, and let's see if, like for Allen and Mahomes and Lamar and all of these other guys, that's the number one trait that most quarterbacks don't have that all of the elite ones do. Let's see if Jaxson Dart can actually turn that into an elite trait of his and turn himself into an elite quarterback, because I think that's the number one path to becoming an elite quarterback in this current iteration of the NFL. So that's my big takeaway for Jaxson Dart this spring. Now, any last takeaways? I also want to give a shout out to a few players in the secondary. Number one, Deonte Banks. He had a really solid practice on, I think that was Wednesday, where he got up there. He made a pass breakup against Odell Beckham Jr., and he had a pass breakup where he blanketed Darnell Mooney. Again, guys, I've said it once before. I'll say it again. Deonte Banks, do I have faith that he's going to be a starting cornerback? No, not necessarily. Do I have an outside chance or confidence or belief that he could be? in this defensive scheme, maybe, because this is a scheme that's perfectly built for him. So I'm very excited to see if he does bounce back. He's got a lot of competition on this roster, but we'll see. I think Deonte Banks at least is going to make the roster because of special teams, but I also do think that this is a perfect scheme for him. And I'm very curious to see what he looks like during training camp. And of course, what he looks like during preseason, and see if he can earn some reps in the regular season, or, if he's somebody that we can say, hey, you know what? I do think he can be a quality backup or a guy that we can rely on if somebody gets injured. Let's see what happens with Deonte Banks. Drew Phillips as well. He had a lot of pass breakups this spring. He had a couple of interceptions. He's been physical. He's been on the ball. So shout out to Drew Phillips as well. Another one of those cornerbacks on this roster. Phillips being, of course, the nickel cornerback on this roster. He's been making some good plays. And let's talk about some pass rushers once again. I actually think all three of the Giants edge rushers had a really good spring. We talked about Arvell Reese and his pass rushing impact. We haven't talked yet in this episode about Abdul Carter, but we talked about him in damn near every single OTA practice recap, because Abdul Carter was constantly in the backfield this spring. Whether you're talking about speed rushes off the edge, whether you're talking about quickly darting into the backfield to make a tackle for loss against the run, whether you're talking about chasing down quarterbacks on a spy. Arvell Reese has been doing it all, and he's been doing it at a very high level throughout the spring. Again, no pads on. If I had to pinpoint one area of weakness in Abdul Carter's game, it is his performance with power. It is his performance where the pads need to be on. So I need to see more in that regard for Abdul Carter in training camp. I just want to see, how does he look when the pads are on? Is he playing a little bit more physical? Is he a little bit stronger this year? Because that's where I think he did have room for improvement. But his speed has always been elite. His bend around the edge has always been elite. But it sounds like at OTAs, he might have taken that up a notch. He might be even quicker. He might have even more bend, because the way that these writers are talking about his bend around the edge this year, they talked about it a lot like this last year, but it seems to be even dialed up now. So I'm very excited for the speed that we're getting out of Abdul Carter. I will also say, Brian Burns coming off of a 16.5 sack campaign. I can tell you guys right now, he is aiming for 20 or more this year. And so far throughout OTAs, it sure looks that way, because he's had a bunch of would-be sacks and quick pressures. So Brian Burns seemingly picking up right where he left off, and that's good news for us. Kayvon Thibodeaux as well had a very active spring. He showed up on a few of those practice reports. He got glowing reviews and praise from John Harbaugh and the Giants coaching staff. He's looking like a top standout performer as well. Obviously a critical year for Kayvon Thibodeaux. Giants electing not to trade him, not unless his value goes up, but he's going to have an opportunity to increase that value all summer and all training camp and preseason, and probably during the regular season, he'll be a member of the New York Giants. And I do think that's a valuable asset to have an edge 3 who is that good. Yes, at some point in this offseason, I did advocate for trading him, but at this point, with the roster being in the state that it is in now, I think it's fine to hold on to him. And especially if you're not going to get, the draft compensation that he's worth, because nobody seems interested in offering a good pick for him. My main argument at the beginning of the offseason was you might want to trade him to clear up cap space so you can sign a defensive tackle. Well, they didn't trade him. They still signed defensive tackles like a DJ Reader, and now they still have Kayvon Thibodeaux. So, again, I actually really like the way that the Giants played this offseason. I will give credit to Joe Schoen for his handling of a few of those things, even though I know, guys, yes, John Harbaugh is mostly dictating all of these things, but he's definitely working with Joe Schoen. And so I think the whole staff deserves credit after a really productive and solid offseason. So shout out to all three of the pass rushers, Burns, Carter, and Thibodeaux. Now, last standout players that I do want to highlight before we dive into the takeaways of the spring. Actually, I'm done with the standout players. I'm going to go to a standout coach, and then I'm going to go to a standout position battle. Now, the coach is Dennard Wilson. Dennard Wilson has been demonstrating a tough love approach. He has been getting the most out of this defense already. They had a few practices where the defensive unit dominated the offense straight up, had 4 turnovers in one practice, had probably 5 or 6 sacks in another practice. They have been turning on the heat, the defense has at Giants OTAs. So credit to Dennard Wilson, getting that defense up to speed real quick, getting them moving, getting them going, and, getting them to stifle that offense at times. And Dennard Wilson, by all accounts, no BS, straight discipline and accountability, hard, tough love. What we like to hear from our New York Giants defensive coordinators, essentially, that's what we're getting out of Dennard Wilson. It's been a lot of attention to detail and a lot of discipline. And those are the things that I think this Giants defense desperately needed last year and didn't have. but will have going forward: attention to detail, accountability, and discipline. Those are the things that this defense is built upon, as well as press coverage and zone coverage as well. You guys know how I feel about the scheme. I love it. And I think it's going to be great for this Giants defense, but definitely one of the more vocal leaders, one of the more aggressive shouters and angry people on the Giants sideline this spring. It's been Dennard Wilson. And I think all of that is excellent. Better to have an aggressive, hard-ass defensive coordinator versus the passive, weak-minded Shane Bowen that the Giants had last year. Sorry for the disrespect, but not over that collapse versus Dallas or that collapse versus Denver just yet. All right, so last takeaway is the kicker battle. That's what I want to talk about here. So the Giants released Jason Sanders, as we discussed on the channel recently. He was the veteran kicker in the room. He's a former all-pro kicker with the Miami Dolphins. He missed all of last year because of a hip injury, I think it was, or maybe it was a groin injury. He signed with the Giants this offseason as a veteran to compete with two young kickers, one of them being undrafted rookie free agent Dominic Zvada, and the other one being last year's undrafted rookie Ben Sauls, who ended up kicking in 3 games for the Giants. He went 8 for 8 in the regular season, but did not attempt a field goal longer than 45 yards. That was the position battle to start spring. Now it's been dwindled down to 2 as Jason Sanders has been released and now signed by the New York Jets. So there was initially, John Harbaugh said, hey, we're going to keep an eye on him because maybe we'll try and sign him back later this summer if we feel like we need to. That's not going to be an option, it appears, because he signed with the Jets after they waived Younghoe Koo, who is also a former Giant. Why are the Jets just recycling former Giants kickers? I'm not sure, but it's what they're doing. So the Giants released Jason Sanders for Juju Smith-Schuster. Now, I don't love that. I think hold on to the veteran kicker, keep the guy with some experience, because you have a 15-man wide receiver room right now. I think that's where you can trim the fat. I understand trimming fat on the roster. How many kickers are you going to take into camp is a fair question. 3 kickers is an anomaly, but I'd rather those 3 kickers continue to compete throughout the summer and see who's the best after a summer of practices rather than just the spring of practices. I'd like to see those 3 compete in the preseason rather than seeing Jalen Hyatt play in the preseason, because why is he on the roster? They've got so many receivers. Trim the fat there. I thought that Juju Smith-Schuster, I like that signing, and I think he's a pretty solid player. But I'd rather Smith-Schuster comes in and Hyatt goes, or one of these other wide receivers that realistically shouldn't or just won't be on this roster, cut one of them. That's how I feel about it personally. So I know some people disagreed with me on Twitter when I put that take out there. Why did we cut Sanders when Hyatt's still on this roster? I know a lot of you are going to agree with that take, but some of you aren't, and that's fine. But I just think the Giants are playing a little bit of a risky game with this kicker position. Listen, I trust John Harbaugh. If there's one position that I trust him on, it's definitely kicker. He knows his kickers. He knows his special teams. So I'm trusting the process here, and I'm not going to complain too much. But I do just feel a little skeptical about it, because I just would have liked a 3-man competition. But then again, there's only so many field goals that can go up in practice. So you got to take that into account. Giants want to get a good look at those 2 young guys. But the day after Jason Sanders got cut, Ben Sauls had his worst practice of camp. I think he went 4 for 14 or something crazy, 4 for 10, something like that. It was a very low percentage made, missed all of his long ones. John Harbaugh said that they cut Jason Sanders because they didn't think his kicking style was a fit for the conditions of MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, New York. Okay, that's fine. And I trust John Harbaugh's evaluation and judgment and scouting of kickers. All of that is true. But let's see how it shapes out. Dominic Zvada, I think he's got so much potential. He's got the strongest leg of those 3 kickers, and he's had a really good spring. But he's also had days where he didn't kick a single field goal because Ben Sauls took all of them. Like the day where Ben Sauls missed the overwhelming majority of his kicks. Zvada didn't kick that day. So it was just all Ben Sauls kind of struggling. So it's going to be hard to get a good look at both of those guys if they're not kicking every single day, which I know is kind of standard. And it also plays into why they ended up cutting Jason Sanders, so they can give more opportunities to both Zvada and Sauls. But my point being here is Ben Sauls looked really good last year in limited sample size, in blowout games for the most part. And we haven't seen him kick from deep, and we haven't really seen him kick in the clutch. Dominic Zvada is a rookie who can definitely kick from deep, but hasn't kicked in the NFL. And certainly we don't know how he's going to respond to the pressures of kicking in the clutch in the NFL. We see a lot of talented young kickers with big legs really struggle to kick in the clutch because it's hard to kick under pressure. So again, I just think the Giants are playing a risky game, but I do like these two young kickers, and I trust John Harbaugh's judgment. So I'll let it play out, and I'll make more of an evaluation and have a stronger stance on it once we get through training camp and the preseason. But those are the takeaways that I have for you guys. Those are pretty much all of the takeaways. Anything else would just be, general change of culture. John Harbaugh's doing a great job, and I'm really excited. I think the aura around this team is different. I think the behavior, I think the brotherhood, the camaraderie, and just the confidence around this team, it's really strong right now. And I think it's going to be a fun year, guys. I really do. So training camp next month. I believe it starts the 22nd. It won't be in New Jersey, not to start out with. It will be in West Virginia. Take me home, country road. Anybody going to go to West Virginia for Giants training camp? Let me know, because I'll probably be there, and I want you to say what's up to me. So I'll keep you guys posted on training camp. I'll continue to do these takeaways. This was a long one. 35 minutes solo is quite a bit, but had to go through and give you guys the Giants OTAs takeaways and recap. You guys know I love doing these takeaways, and I know that you guys really love them too. So had to do it for you guys, and appreciate everybody who did tune in. Do make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Check out Prize Picks down below and use code HMA when you sign up for $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. And guys, enjoy the game tonight. Let's go New York Knicks, and let's go New York Giants.